Alright, so now our context providers being in the place, we can start with other components in our application. So I'll want you to move into your source directory and create a folder with the name components, and inside that folder we'll be creating the components that we need inside of our application. And the components that we'll be needing are book list. So let's create up a directory with the name components and a file inside it with the name book list. There's a shorthand to do so. Just move into a source directory. Alright, so let's first close all of these because we are in no longer requirement of them. Let's close this. Now inside the source directory, what you're going to do is that let's create a file, and the name of the file is going to be components. So let's create a file with the name components, and inside this file we are going to have inside this particular folder we are going to have a file with the name book list. So let's create a file with the name book list, and the extension that is going to be JSX. Alright, now hit enter. Now you can see you are having a folder, and inside this you're having a file with the name booklist.jsx. So this is the first component that we'll be configuring, but before that move into your app.js, and inside this let's import our book list, because as you can see the flow in index we are calling our app.js, and inside this we're calling a book list. Instead you can do many things. For example, you can directly in index you can call your book list, completely remove this app. Okay, so let's do that only. Rather than having this as an intermediate between the two, let's delete our app.js and directly call a book list from our index.js. So we have deleted our app.js. Now move into your index.js. Now inside this you might see there is no such thing known as app at the moment. We have deleted it. So for that purpose, let's get rid of this as well, and we'll be importing a book list. So import book list from, and the place from where we're calling it is in the source directory, and from the source directory we are calling our components. So from inside the components we'll be calling our book list. Alright, so this is the component that we are importing. Now move into your app.js this app and change this to book list. Alright, so we can name it book list. Alright, so now we are all good. So do I need to call it book list just because the reason the name of the component is going to be book list? Well, the answer is no. You can name this literally anything. You can just call it maybe an ape or a balloon if you want. It doesn't really matter what you actually call it over here. This path that calls it that component is the main source from which component is going to be called. For example, if I just I'm importing book list, right, and we are going to export a book list from here. So it really doesn't matter what you're going to import, what's the name that you're going to use over here. It can be any alias, it can be even app, and you can again call this app. It won't even matter. But just for the sake of my own sanity, I'll be using book list because it doesn't really matter what you call it. So let's just name it book list over here. Alright, so now we are all good. Now let's hit save and move into our book list. Alright, so now I will be creating the second context, that is a content context, and for that purpose here is a example or some reference book's name as well as the data. For example, the ISBN number, the title, the subtitle, the author's name, the date or the year when they were published, and all those stuffs. So you just need to copy this entire data and we'll be using this, and this has been provided to you along with the assets folder. So now let's head to our content.context, and inside this what we're going to do is that the first step is to create up a functional, or I mean to say class component. So just run rcc and this is going to create your class component for you. So rcc. Alright, so now here is a class context component. Now we'll need to import certain files, that is create context module, create context, and after this create context we'll be using this inside of our content context provider. So let's name it content context provider. Alright, so now as I said you earlier, just copy this entire content that's in here and we'll be create a state over here, and let's move back and create a state, and this is going to be equal to our, and paste the entire data over here. So we are having our books now as well as the data. So is this an extra, I guess? Alright, so now we are good. We are having this state object, and inside this we're having our books. For you to get a better look, so create up a state that's inside of your component, and inside the state paste what all you had, that is our books. So let me run prettier now. Alright, so now it looks better. So inside this state all of your entire book data is going to go. And now this is the simplest context provider that you'll ever make. So let's create a constant that is book context. So book context, and this is going to be equal to create context. So let's create up a context now. All right, we also need to export this context. So export context. All right, now the second step was to wrap this context provider inside of a component tree. So let's wrap it around a component tree, and we'll need to import a provider now. So import context provider, and we are getting it from the same location, that is a context. Inside this we are getting this from our content provider, content context. All right, so now let's wrap it. So give it content context provider, and just wrap it inside of our app, above our app. All right, so now we are passing our data. This is all we need to do to pass our data. All right, now after this, head into your content context. It's a kind of tongue twister for me. So now inside this, just head to your return, and inside this return, book context dot provider, and inside this provider we are going to pass it with this dot props dot children. All right, so here is a children as well as a value property, and inside this case the value is nothing but simply the state of the context. So value is going to be equal to this dot state. All right, so this is our entire content context. So we are good now. Let me just expand this. All right, so this is our entire content context. Okay, so let me just save it. Now we'll be creating other components that we need inside of our application. So save this, and we'll be passing or mapping this data from our context. All right, so first step is let's import the stuff that we need. So now you might recall we installed React code snippets, and this might be a good time to use them. Just run rcc, and what this is going to do is that it is going to create up a class component inside of your React application. So if you just run rcc, here is my class component, create a functional component, then just run rfc. There are a whole bunch of code that you can take a look into if you want to learn about different shorthand to create up a default boilerplate. So if you just run rfc, it is going to create a React functional export component. So here is my functional component, but at the moment we'll be using class component. So now let's hit save. Now there is this other file that I like to import, React module, and that is create context. So let's import it as well. So let's import create context. All right, so we'll be using it inside of our application. So let's create a constant with the name theme context. So let's create a const, and the name is theme context, and this is going to be equal to React context. So we have already imported the create context. So create. All right, so now this is the first step, that is to create a context object. So that's what we did. Now let's export it as well. So export const theme context, that is equal to create context. Now after this, what we're going to do is that let's come down here, right inside here, and we'll make sure that we are exporting our class. So export default, it doesn't matter, it's just really a personal preference that I'm doing it like this. I like to export my components right at the end. So export default theme context. All right, it's totally up to you whether you want to do it this way or not. Now just right inside of your component, let's create up a state. So this state is going to be equal to, so all right, we see there's an error, and that says that our component's name and this constant name is same. So let's name our component something different. We can name it context provider. So theme context provider, let's name it theme context provider. All right, so now it's right. Now I also need to define the default as well. So theme context provider, they should be the same. All right, now it's good. Now inside the state, we are going to have two modes, that is whether the application is in dark mode. So is dark mode. So is dark mode, and initially it's going to be true. And after this, we're going to specify the properties of dark mode. So dark is going to have the properties, and this is going to have a background color. So give it a BG, and that's going to be equal to a hex value that we're going to put up, that is hashtag 2222222. Hashtag and 6 times 2. So is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, it is. Now after this background, we are going to have a color. So give it a color as well, and that is going to be equal to RGBA. So RGBA 239, 83 and 80. So 83, 80 and 1. So 80 and 1. All right, now after this, hover, give this a hover, and this hover is going to have an RGBA again. All right, so give it a comma, RGBA, and that is 239, 83, 80 and 0.8. 80 and 0.8. All right, so this is my hover. Now it should be around bracket, so give it a bracket. All right, now after this, we are going to switch to light theme. What if is dark mode is not true? Then the properties of light mode is, and inside this light mode we are going to have again BG, and this time it is going to be equal to hashtag EC F0F1 F0F1. All right, so this is a background color for white. Now after this color property, that's going to be equal to hashtag 222 again. So hashtag 2222222. And after this color, let's also give this a hover. So this is going to have a hover as well, and this hover is going to be having an RGBA property value of 255, and after this 193 and 7 and 0.8. All right, so this is our state at the moment. Let me use my prettier. To use the prettier formatting, you just have to press Shift Alt plus F, and that's going to make sure that your code is indented. Now after this, let's create up a method to change our theme. So let's create a method that's going to help us to change a theme. So change theme, that is going to be equal to, this is going to be an arrow function, and inside this, whenever this function is called, we'll make sure that state is changed. So this dot set state. Now to change the value of state, this method is used, that is set state. So we'll be changing a state. So this dot set state, and this is going to make sure that state is dark mode is turned to opposite of what all it is. So if it's light, then it's going to turn to dark, and if it's dark, it's going to turn to light. So is dark mode is equal to not is dark mode, not this dot state dot is dark mode. All right, so now this is going to help us to change our theme. All right, so now we are on the second step, that is to wrap our component context provider. So now we are exporting it. So let's go into our index and import it. So let's import our context provider, theme import theme context provider, and this is coming from our context file. So it's at the root directory. So inside my context, I'm having my theme context provider, that is this theme context. All right, now let's wrap it around our app.js. So theme context provider, Alright, so now we have initiated the second step and completed it, and after this we have to pass the values. So let's create a provider, that is theme context.provider. So come inside of your render, and inside this move into your return and give this inside this div. Let's pass our data. So create a theme context dot provider, and inside this provider we'll be passing in with children. So pass it with this dot props dot children. Now we have to pass in with values, right? So let's pass in with the values that we need to supply it with. So the value that we are passing inside of a context provider is the state as well as all the values of state. That is, this is the spread operator that we use to spread what all lies in an array. So we'll provide supplying it with this dot state value. So this dot state supplied with all that there is in the state, as well as a theme change or change theme method. So change theme, and this is going to be CHEN change theme, and this is going to be equal to our this dot change theme. So all right, now we are passing our data as well. Now the last step and the final step is to use this data inside of application, which won't be possible unless and until we create all of our components. So let's leave it for here. Now let's move into our other component, that is our book context, or the content context, and let's create this for now. So now how should you use React context? So these are the checklists that need to be taken into account when creating when using React context. And there are basically 4 steps. First of the step is that you need to create a context using create context method. So let's the first step is to create context. So the first step that includes is create a context. And the second step is take your created context and wrap the context provider around your component tree. So that basically means that wrap it around component tree. Take your provider. The second step is take your provider and wrap around component tree. Alright, what this means is that once you create up a context provider, you need to actually take that particular context provider and wrap it around your context tree. So a good place to wrap it around might be index.js. Like right inside my strict mode, I can just, for example, if I just imported a provider, so this is my provider, and I could wrap my entire app around this. Now the data is available to any component inside my application. So this is a good place to actually pass down data. So we can use this. Apart from this, the third checkpoint that you need to pass to successfully create a React context is that put any values that you like your context provider using the value prop. All right, so pass the data. That is the third and most important step. That is, you should pass the data that you want other components to receive. Pass the data. All right, now after this, fourth step is read the data that you have passed. Read the data that you have passed. All right, so these are the four steps to create a React context. This is a kind of checklist. You need to first create a context, then you need to wrap your component provider around it, then pass the data, and then read the data that you want. All right, so now let's enough talking. Let's start creating our context object. So now we'll be creating our application and the components that we need inside of our application. So for that purpose, head into your source directory. And inside the source directory, let's create up a context folder that's going to create the context or hold the context components. And we'll be having 2 context components inside of our application, and they are for our theme provider as well as for our content provider. So let's create a folder with the name context, and inside this we'll be needing 2 files. So context. All right, inside this context, let's create a file with the name theme context.js, and other file that is going to be named as content context.js. All right, so these are the two context files that will be sitting at the top of the application along with index.js and supplying the information that they need. So let's head into our theme context, and inside this theme context, let's create our theme context first. So now before we start with theme context or content context, let's discuss what context actually is. So talking about React context actually allows us to pass down and consume the data in whatever component that we need to pass it to, and it saves us from prop drilling. Now what prop drilling is, as you might remember, that what if I have to pass down a data from a parent component to a child component that is not the immediate child of my parent component, then I need to pass the data to the subsequent component so that they can further pass the data. Now this holds the possibility and probability of memory leak, which we obviously do not want inside of our application. Therefore, an easy method can be to use React context, and just using Redux for the sake of convenience for passing the data from one component to another component might not be a good idea, because that's just going to increase your bundle size. And Redux under the hood even uses the React context. Now when should you use the React context? Like in this case, you can use the React context when you're passing theme data. So for example, if you're passing theme data from one component to another component, then React context might be a good place to place the data. So we are using theme data to pass down from one component to other component. Now apart from this, you can also use theme context when you're passing the user's data. So what if I'm passing the user's data, whether the user is authenticated or not, whether the user is subscribed to my particular subscribed to this particular plan or not, or which plan is he or her subscribed to. Apart from this, you can also use React context to pass down the location specific data. For example, what's the language that the user is using. For example, if they have shifted their entire language base to maybe Arabic or Japanese, so to pass down those kind of data. Now data should be placed in React context that should not be updating often. That means if the data is quite dynamic, it changes over for example, if the data is very dynamic, it's changing a lot, then React context might not be the place where you want to place it, because React context was not made for entire state management. I mean, for the state management, we are having different libraries like Redux or Flux. Now apart from this, what problem does React context solve? So as I've already told you, React context solves the problem of prop drilling, and you can. So now we'll be starting with our application, but before we do that, head to the project file that has been provided to you. You might see that there are a bunch of link as well as script tags that you can see right over here. Just copy them and move into your app directory, and inside the index.html, just head right above your title and paste them. As you can see, I already pasted them. We are having this font awesome icon. This is the free version that we are using for font awesome. We'll be using the icons. This is a script tag for that. Apart from it, we are having 3 link tags, 2 for Google Fonts and 1 for the Bootstrap that we'll be using inside of our application. Now after seeing these fonts, an obvious question might pop up in your mind, and that is, what if I do not want to use these fonts? What if I would like to use different fonts inside of my application? Then all you have to do is that just open up your Google and search for Google Fonts and head to the first link that appears, that is fonts.google.com, and inside this you might search for fonts that you like. So head into Google and perhaps you'd like to search for some fonts. What if I like the Patrick hand? So I would like to search for Patrick hand. Alright, so here is the Patrick hand style. It's Patrick. Alright, so what if I like to use this Patrick hand? So just click on this, and once you're over here, click on select this style. And once you do so, here is a Patrick hand, and I can select for Patrick hand right over here. Just copy these link tags and paste it over there. And once you want to use the Patrick hand inside of your application, just go to CSS and specify the family that you're using, and that is Patrick hand. It's just this simple. All right, so now let's start creating our application. But before we do that, there's a bit of housekeeping that I'd like to do. And that preferably includes, let's get rid of all the things that we don't need. So if I just remove my logo and app.css from here, because we'll be not using the app.css file as well as a logo file, and over time we are also going to delete them. So let's remove them from first and hit save. And now if I just take a look into my application, you might see that CSS along with that particular workin, which was being applied into my function class app, has been removed now. All right, so after this, what we're going to do is that we'll be removing all those files that we do not need from our source directory, and the files that we do not need are preferably app.css, app.test.js, logo.svg. So let's remove these 3 files for now. So all right, now we have removed all those files from our system that we do not need. Now move into index.js and as well remove all this except for this margin and body. So give this body a margin, leave this body with a margin 0. All right. Now if I just move into my index.js, so this is the top level of our application. Now let's discuss what all extensions that we need inside of our application. So you might have seen when I just wrote h1 and just close this, there was an auto close. That means I got this closing tag for h1 automatically. I didn't have to write it. So there are a few extensions that might come in handy when you're developing your application, so we are going to install them now. I'm already having them, but I'd like to show to you what all you need. So move inside this extensions file and let me show to you what all extensions do you need inside of application. So you'll be needing auto close tag, so let's search for it. Let me close this. So you might need auto close, so just search for the extensions in the marketplace. So that is auto close. So this auto close is a tag, is the extension that you like to install. So just head over here and click on install, and it is going to install your auto close tag. Now apart from this auto close tag, you'll also be needing this auto rename tag. Now what this auto rename tag does, well, the name is self-explanatory, but then also I'm going to show to you. Like at the moment I'm having this as a heading 1. What if I like at some point in time I decided this that I do not want this h1, I want this to be a paragraph element. So I'm going to remove this and create a paragraph element. So yeah, you can see that the closing tag has, the corresponding closing tag has also been changed to paragraph. Now after this auto close and auto rename tag, there is one more extension that I like you to have, and that is bracket pair colorizer. So bracket pair colorizer. So just install this bracket pair colorizer too. It's going to colorize your brackets. As you can see that this bracket and the corresponding closing one is having the same color, and if I just try to have another bracket inside of this, for example another bracket, they are going to have corresponding colors similar to each other, so to ease out the development process. All right, so now after this also install Prettier. So Prettier is a code formatter. Prettier is a code formatter that helps you to clean up your mess. For example, if I'm having a bunch of paragraph elements over here, let me just copy this, copy and paste. For example, I'm not a very neat code writer. I do not write my codes very neatly, and for example, if it's over here and this is over here, when I'm going to press Shift Alt and F, it's going to make sure that it is organized properly. So this is what it does. It makes sure that your code has been formatted properly. Let me get rid of this now. All right, now after this the other extension that I like you to have is npm. So just run npm and install it inside of your VS Code. So this extension supports running npm scripts defined in the package.json and validating and installed modules against the dependencies defined in the package.json. So basically the name is self-explanatory what it does. Now apart from npm, you'll also be needing this npm.intelligence. So download it as well. So what this npm.intelligence is going to do, it is going to help you with your autocompletes, and you'll be getting to know about them shortly. So let me just close this. So these are all about the extensions that you need inside of your application. So now we have got the green flag. Now we can move into our app directory and launch a server from there. So just let's move into a directory, and that is change directories to bookshelf. So bookshelf is the name of application, so we'll be going there. Alright, so now we are inside the bookshelf. Now we need to run our server, and to do that you might see that there are a bunch of script commands, and those are namely npm start, and to start a development server we need to run this command, that is npm start. So let's run the npm start command to start a development server and hit enter. Alright, so npm start, and then just hit enter, and it is going to compile your default application that the CRA utility provides us, and open up a Windows with a URL localhost 3000 loaded in it, because that's the default URL in which our application loads. So now we see that our application is up and running, but we'll like to make some amendments to it, like it says that edit source app.js and save to reload. So that's what we're going to do. We won't be closing on the server for now. Just open up another command prompt or terminal, and we'll be opening our VS Code instance of our application. And to do that, just change directories to your application, that in this case is bookshelf. So bookshelf. Alright, now just run code with a period. Remember, it is only going to run if you are having Visual Studio Code installed. Otherwise, you'll have to, if you're having Atom, then you have to run Atom with a period. But since I'm having Visual Studio Code, therefore I'll be running code with a period. And what this command is going to do, it's going to open up a VS Code instance of my application, that is bookshelf. Make sure that you are inside of a bookshelf, and then hit enter. So alright, now we are inside of our bookshelf, and here you might see that there are certain folders as well as some files. So first of them is the node modules. So what these node modules contain. So if you just take a look into your package.json file, you'll be finding that you are having this Zest DOM, React, React DOM, React scripts, Web Vitals. So all these node modules are actually saved in this particular folder, that is node modules. You'll be also having a Babel as a compiler. And apart from this, we are having this public folder. So there are a bunch of important information inside this, and that is your favicon.ico. So what this favicon.ico is, this is basically if we just go back into a browser, so this little small icon that you see over here of React, this is that ICO icon that we are actually importing inside of our index.html. Now let's head into our index.html file, and here you might be able to find some meta tags as well as some link tags. Apart from this, if I just go down, here you'll be able to see a div with an ID root. So this is the place where all of our code that's compiled is going to be placed up. So this is all about the public that we need to know about. Now after this, we are having this source directory. Now inside the source directory, this is our area of interest. This is the place where we'll be coding the entire time. And here you might see that there is a CSS file that states that it's app.css. So this is the CSS of this particular default template that we are having over here. Now this is app.js, and this suggests us that we have to make any sorts of changes, we have to edit this app.js. So that's what you're going to do. So let's just make sure that we add a different component over here. So let's get rid of this entire header segment. So inside this div, let's create a h1 tag that's going to have the text inside it that says that working. Now hit save, and this should actually recompile our application. If I just take a look into my server, so you can see that it's compiling. Alright, so it has compiled along with a warning that says that a logo is defined but never used, and that's totally correct because we are defining this logo over here but we are not using it. So if I just move into my browser now, you can see that it states that it's working. Alright, so now we'll be starting with our application. So now I'll be creating a React application, and thanks to Facebook's Create React App utility, they saved us a lot of work. And to create a React application, you just need to run these 3 commands to start your application. Just run npx create react app followed by the name of your app, then the name which you want to give to your application. After that, you have to move into your app directory and start your server from there. And believe me when I say this, there are many ways to create a React application, and you can create everything from scratch. You can install Babel and then React and React DOM. But yeah, from a perspective that you are learning React for the first time, CRE utility might come in handy because it really saves us a lot of work. Now before we start with our application, there are certain prerequisites, and one of them is that you need to have Node.js installed on your systems. I'm having 16.13.1 at the time of recording this video. To check the node version which you are on, just run the command node -v, and this should give you your node version. Now apart from this, we'll also be needing a code editor. You can use Visual Studio Code because it's totally free, and you can get this stable build for Windows, Mac, or Linux. But if you have some personal preference for maybe like if you like Sublime Text or Atom, feel free to use them. But if you will be using Visual Studio Code, it does come with a lot of features that might come in handy when starting with your development process. So I'm not going to show to you how to install Node.js and Visual Studio Code because that's fairly simple to do so. You just need to download it and install it in your systems. Now let's create a React application. So fire up your terminal or command prompt and we'll be... So open up your command prompt and run the following commands: npx create React app, followed by the name of the app. In this case, is Bookshelf, so let's name it Bookshelf. Now, one particular naming restriction that you should know about, and that is you just can't have any uppercase letters in this. You just need to have lowercase letter. Now hit enter, and it's going to create your React application. And once it's done, we'll be moving into our app directory and launching our server. Now it's going to take some amount of time. By the time, you'll have to wait. So now let's take a look at the application that we're building. So this is the application. This is a simple React application in which we are going to store data, and the data is going to be passed on via help of React context. We won't be using prop drilling to pass data from one component to another component. Apart from this, we can even change themes, and you can see that there are certain properties inside this application. That is, we can change themes. We are passing data via React context. So what you will be learning in this particular application is that you'll be learning how to use different types of hooks inside React. Apart from this, you'll also learn how to pass data via props. So alright, now it's time to deploy our application, and there are quite many ways to do so. You can actually deploy them on various platforms. You can deploy them on Heroku, but this time we'll be using Netlify to deploy them. And for that purpose, you will just have to create up a free account. You won't be charged anything for deploying an application. They provide a really great service for React applications. So just click on get started, and then you'll have to fill up the information that they require. That's basically your email address and all that. And after that, you can start with the application. Now, before we move any further, let's create a build version of our application. So move inside our application, and as you might see at the moment, we are not having any sorts of build directories. So we are having this source, we are having this gitignore and node modules. Now what if I just run the command npm run build? This is going to create a build directory for me, which is supposed to be deployed. So now I'll hit enter, and it's going to create a build folder for us. Alright, so now you see that we are having this build directory. So all we have to do is that deploy this build directory into our server. So move into your Netlify. I already have an account, and click on add new site and deploy manually. Now all I need to do is that I just need to drag and drop that. So let me just bring my console, and from here what I'm going to do is that I'm going to take this build file and drop it inside this. So now you'll be able to see this build file over here. So all you need to do is that take this particular build file or this directory and drop it inside of your Netlify account. So all you need to do is just drop it here, and it's going to upload it. And once it's done, it's going to deploy our application on a server. So alright, the site has not been deployed yet. We are having this as our default name, that is hungry-saha -6 f66bd. Now this is my application site domain. Now if I just click on this, so here is my site, and you can see it's on a particular domain name that is having .netlify.app as its extension. So it was really simple to deploy our application over here. I can also change the domain name if you just go into domain, but here's a catch: you just can't change this .netlify.app. If you have to do that, you'll have to purchase their premium account. We can add custom domains to it. Alright, so give it an option, edit site name, and I can edit it for something like, so now our domain name is Bookshelf React app. So if I just click on this, here is my application with my custom domain name. So we have successfully created and deployed our application. So alright, now we have completed our application. The only piece that remains is to add CSS into our application. So head to your index.css, and the CSS file has already been provided to you, so that you can actually paste that particular file, because in this React course I don't really feel like as if discussing CSS would be of any use, because that's a kind of prerequisite for this course. So, and pretty much all the properties that has been used are more than self-explanatory. So just copy that particular file and paste it over here. So this is the entire CSS file that needs to be in its place so that our application can work. Now hit save, and we'll be taking a look at our application. So if I just move into my application at the moment, so yeah, this is my application. As you might see that there are books as well as the authors and some short description about them. That is their subheading. And I can change theme from light to dark, and you might see that each and every particular color is changing. At the moment it's yellow, and if I just change my theme it becomes pinkish. So this is our application that we have created. So now let's make the other component, that is a book component, because we will be now mapping our data inside of our book.jsx. So let's head first over to our book.jsx and make sure that we are mapping our data correctly. So now we'll be removing this h1 tag, and inside this we'll be filling up with dynamic data. For that purpose, just move into your book.js, and here too we'll also be importing a theme context. So let's import our theme context. So let's import theme context, and this is coming from our context, and the name of the file is theme context. Alright, so this is the file that we are getting. Now after this, let's get rid of this entire div. Alright, so now as you might see that we are getting a theme context from our theme context file. Now let's create a consumer. So theme context dot consumer, and this consumer is going to consume what all lies inside of a theme context. And let's create up a context now. So it's going to have a theme context. So context theme, and then this is going to have an arrow. And now let's destructure all that data that we destructured over here. So const is dark mode, apart from this light property as well as the dark property. And after this we'll also be import alright, so these are all the three properties that we need. We are in no requirement of change theme, because change theme method, because we won't be needing it inside of a book component. Now this all is equal to context.theme, so context theme. Alright, so this is all that we need inside of application. Now then again, what do we want is that if const theme, so let's create const theme, and if is dark mode is enabled, that means is dark mode is true, then we want the theme to be dark, and if that's not the case, then we want the theme to be light. Alright, so now things are pretty much simple and clear. And after this li, alright, so there's a spelling mistake. Alright, so now we are good. Now after this, give this a return, and inside this return we are going to create a div with the class name col-lg-4. So let's create a div with the class name column4 column-lg-4. Alright, and we'll be adding certain other class properties to it, and that is namely col sm-6 and mb-4. Alright, so this is our div. Now inside this div we are going to have another div of class name portfolio items. So let's create a div with the class name portfolio items. Alright, so after this portfolio items, you're going to have an anchor tag, and this anchor tag is going to have a class name of portfolio link. So portfolio hyphen link. Alright, so this is our anchor tag. It's also having an href. Now this href, let's just put it up to hashtag. Alright, so this is our h tag. We are having this class name as well. This is supposed to be up here. And here we are having a class name. Alright, now there's going to be a data tool that's going to be equal to model. So give this a data tool as well. Data tool, data toggle, and this is going to be equal to model. So this is going to be equal to model. Alright, so now this is all about anchor tag. Now inside this anchor tag we are going to have another div with the class name portfolio hover. So create another div with the class name portfolio hyphen hover. Alright, so now after this portfolio hover, we are going to give this an inline styling, and this is going to have a background color of theme hover. So let's create an inline styling inside of our div, and so style, and this is going to be give it a nested curly braces. Now give this a background of theme dot hover. So this is what inside of this is the styling of our div. Now apart from this styling, we are going to have another div inside of this div, and that's going to have a name of portfolio hover content. So create another div inside of this div, and this is going to have a class name of portfolio hyphen hover hyphen content. So portfolio hover content. Alright, so now inside this we're going to have an I. So let's create up an I tag, and this I is going to have a class name of FAS plus. So as you might recall what this class name is, so this class name is for font awesome icons. So give this a class name that's going to be equal to FAS plus and FA hyphen 3x. So this is for addition symbol, and this I tag is going to be a self closing. So make sure, so let's give this, so this is our I tag. Now this is all about our image, our div with the portfolio hover class name. Now after this div of portfolio hover class name, we're going to have an image tag. So let's just come out of this particular div, and inside of anchor we are going to have an image tag. So come out of this particular div, and inside the anchor we are going to have an image tag. So here we are. Let's create an image tag, and this is going to be equal to class name that's going to be equal to image fluid and width of 100. So image fluid and the width of 100. Alright, so this is our image. Image is supposed to be self closing. So here we have given it a self closing. Now give this source. So feel free to post any random book image over here, and as well as an alternative name. So this is going to have an alternative name, because image is the only thing that we are not getting from a context object, because we are not having any such property inside of our data. If I just move into my book context, that is inside of my context file, you might see that in this entire array we are not having any data for the web, for uh, the image of that particular book. So you can paste up one particular image that's going to be common for all the images, but apart from that we are having all the other data as dynamic data. So let me close this. All right, so this is going to have an alternative name of book image. All right, so now this is our image. Now apart from this image, we are going to have captions as well as subheadings. So what you're going to do is that we're going to create another div. So just come out of this particular anchor tag and run your prettier. And after this, let's create a div with the class name portfolio caption. So this is going to have a class name of portfolio hyphen caption. And inside this portfolio caption, we're going to have a div of the class name portfolio caption heading. So let's create a div with the class name portfolio hyphen caption hyphen heading. All right, so inside this we're going to pass in the book title. So this dot props dot title. So if I just take a look into my book context set, that is my content context. So inside this content context we are having this title as well as the author's name. So these are the two properties that we're going to show inside of our book.jsx. So this dot props dot title is going to make sure that a title is being rendered into the screen. Apart from this, we will make sure that we are also showing our users the author of that particular book. So let's create a div, and this div is going to have a class name that is going to be equal to portfolio caption subheading. So portfolio hyphen caption hyphen subheading, and the text should be muted. So text is muted. Alright, so this is our div. I feel like there's an extra div over here, so let's get rid of this. Text muted. So now let's display the author of this book. So this dot props dot author. So all right, now our application is complete, but I'm going to assure you that this is going to look pretty ugly because we haven't used any CSS in it. So let's take a look into our application. So now let's create a book list component, and later on, once we are done with it, we'll be mapping each and every book to a book component. So as you might see that we are already importing our theme context as well as our book context. So let's get rid of this book for now. We'll be calling it later on, and inside this return, let's pass it a theme provider or the theme context.consumer. So we are having a theme context.provider that is getting wrapped around our component tree, and apart from this we are having a theme context.consumer. So this is the consumer. All right, so now inside this theme consumer we are going to pass in our context theme. So give it curly braces, and inside this let's pass it with context theme. This is going to contain the context data that is inside of our theme. So all right, now inside this we're going to pass it with the book content provider, or the book context dot consume, I mean to say. So let's pass this book context dot consumer. All right, so now this book context.consumer is going to make sure that whatever lies inside this is going to have access to the data inside of our content context. So give it curly braces as well, and inside this pass it with context book. So give it context book, and inside this we're going to destructure certain amount of data, and that is going to be preferably the book data as well as the theme data. So const and books, and this is going to be equal to our context book. So give it equals to context book. Apart from this, we'll be destructuring the data that we are getting from our theme context, and if I just move into my theme context for now, you might see that there's different states. We are having is dark mode that is set to true. Apart from this, we are having this dark state and this light state, and the dark state is further having a background, a color, and a hover property. So we'll be destructuring them, but as in the case of content context, you might see that there's a single state that is just books, therefore we just destructured it. Now let's destructure all the other piece of data from our theme context, and that is dark mode. This is going to be equal to context theme. So context theme. All right. There is no need for these. Okay. So now what all we are getting from our context theme? So we are getting our change theme method. So change. Apart from this change theme, we are also getting our is dark mode. So is dark mode, and after this we are also getting our dark properties. So dark, and the light properties. So give it light. So this is all the data that we are getting. Now we have to create a constant, and that is going to be called as theme. So now let's create another constant that is going to define the theme that we have, that is whether we are having the dark theme or the light theme set as active. So we'll be creating a const theme, and if is dark mode is true, that means if it dark mode is true, then what do you want is that then we want the theme to be dark because the dark mode is true, and if that's not the case, then we want the theme to be light. Now this dark and this light are having different properties, as you might recall inside of your theme context. This dark is having the background, the color, and hover, as well as this light is having a background and color and hover. So the properties are going to be corresponding to what they are named. After this, let's get this a return statement as well. So return, and inside this return we are going to have a section. So let's create a section, and this section is supposed to have a class name of page section. So give this a class name of page section as well. So this is the parent component of the return. Now this section is going to have an inline style, and in React, whenever we are in requirement to inline style any tag, we pass it with style, and that is going to be equal to two sets of curly braces that are nested inside each other. And now let's pass it with the properties. So basically they are background color, so give this a background color, background color, and the background color that we are using is coming from our theme. So for example, if the theme is dark, then we want the background color to be equal to theme.bg, and as well we need to supply it with another property of CSS, and that is the color property. So give this color, and that is theme.color. Alright, so this is all the style that we need. Now give this an ID as well, that is going to be equal to portfolio. So portfolio. Now let's hit save. Okay, so now inside this section we are going to have another component that is going to be a div of class name container. So let's create a div of class name container, and inside this div what you're going to have is another div with the class name TextWrite. So let's create another div with the class name TextWrite. And inside this TextWrite, we're going to have a button, and this button is going to have a class name of btn and an unclick property that we are getting from our theme context, and that is to change the theme, that is whether it's going to be light or dark. So let's create a button, and this button is supposed to have, so create a button, and this button is going to have a class name of btn. So give this a class name of btn and a class name of btn danger. All right, give this a on click property as well. So on click, that's none other than our change theme. So give this change theme, and as you might recall that we are also destructuring it over here. So change theme. All right, now this button is supposed to have a text. Now this text is going to be equal to change theme. So this button is nothing but an example of that toggle button that helps us to change the theme if you have visited any such site. Now apart from this, we are going to have another div that's going to be right next to the div of TextWrite. So this div is going to be having a class name of TextCenter. So give this div a class name of TextCenter now. And inside this div, we are going to have h2 tag with the class name section heading, and this is going to contain book folio. So like create a h2 tag, and this is going to have a class name. So give this a class name that is going to be equal to section as well as section subheading. So it's going to have a class name of section heading and text uppercase. So text uppercase. All right, so inside this h2 tag, let me just scroll it down so that it's more kind of visible. And inside this h2, we're going to have the textbook. All right, so now let's come out of our h2 tag and create an h3 tag now. And this h3 tag is going to have a class name of section subheading, text muted. So section hyphen subheading, and apart from, okay, let's hit enter, as well as section subheading and text hyphen muted. Now inside this h3, we're going to have some lorem ipsum text. So let's just give this a random text, lorem. All right, so this is the lorem text that we're going to have inside of our h3 tag, and let's hit save. Okay, I might just need 1 or 2 line, not 3. Okay, so this is more than sufficient for h3. So now let's come out of this particular div, and we'll be creating another div with the class name row. So let's create another div with the class name row, and inside this we're going to call a book element that we have created. So let's call in a book element, though we have not populated it with dynamic data, but let's just leave it like this. So yeah, this is our application as it is now. All right, so we are not using this books, and that's fair because we are not passing it with any data list. And for that purpose, let's create up a class component. So tap RCC, and it hopefully should create a class component for you, but for some strange reason it doesn't seem to be working for now, so we'll have to write them manually. So the first step involves importing React from React. So let's import React from React for now. And after this, there are certain files that I need, and that is this book.jsx. So let's import this as well. So move into your book.jsx so that your component doesn't break when you run this application. So let's just give this some default value for now. So import React from React. Why don't we use SCE? All right, so here it is. Now inside this div, let's give this an h1 tag. So this is going to have an h1 tag, and it's going to have hello individual books here. Books here. All right, and as you can see, we are exporting them by default. All right, so now let's close this and import this inside of our book list. So import book from our, it's in the same directory, so just in the same directory look for a file with the name book. All right, so here it is. Now as you can see inside my book.jsx, this file is being exported as export default book. Now we'll be importing certain components from our context providers, that is my theme context provider, as well as my content context provider. So it can be a really good tongue twister, I mean to say. Now inside this theme context provider, we'll be importing this theme context. So this is the only file that we are going to export, and as you can see, we are exporting it as well, but there is no default keyword over here. So how am I supposed to import this theme context if it does not have this default? And you can see that from this entire file I just need this theme context, because if you're talking about provider, we are already wrapped our component tree around it. So let's import our theme context from our theme context provider. So to import that, you'll have to use curly braces and place the file path, that is you have to move up one directory, and from inside the context we'll be getting a file from our theme context. So theme context, and the file that we are getting, or the object that we are getting, is the theme context object. So the name of the object is theme context. All right, now apart from this theme context, we'll also be importing from content context, or from, let's move into a content context. Inside this, from this file, we'll be importing a book context. So move into your book list and let's import a book context. This is coming from a file that's in the same directory as theme context. So context, and from context we are getting our content context. All right, so these are all the files that we need inside of our book list. Now let's create a class that is, and the name of the class is going to be book list. So let's create a class with the name book list. So class book list, and it's going to extends component component. All right, so inside this you're going to have a render method, and inside this render give it a return. All right, now you must be seeing that there's a red. All right, so let me just, inside this return, give it a React fragment or a div as a parent container. It doesn't really matter what you give it. And inside this, let's place an h1 tag that says that, let's call in our book element, book component here that we have imported. All right, so now we are all good. Now you can see that there's a red error that says that